Support for Radio Friends comes from OsteoStrong. Improvements in bone density, strength, and power can be achieved by weekly 5-minute no-sweat sessions on their 4-spectrum machines. These isometric robotic machines safely emulate high-impact loading on different parts of the skeletal system, which stimulates activity in bone-building cells. Balance and agility can be improved by 2-minute sessions on vibration plates. Every session is supervised by a trained coach. Learn more on Facebook or call to set up a complimentary wellness assessment and session. Good morning and welcome to Radio Friends on Thursday, July the 6th. John Howe is with us. Of course, you may know John from being the book author of The Foolish Corner.
Yes, indeed.
Today, we're going to talk about something that is called present bias.
Present bias, yes.
What is present bias?
And it will have finance implications, understanding it, as well as others, which we'll get to. So present bias means that we as humans, it seems to be ingrained that we do things in the present, mostly that are pleasurable, at the expense of the future.
Not thinking about what consequence this is going to have maybe 2 years down the road or 10 years down the road.
Exactly.
You may spend a whole lot of money right now because this is going to make you feel good, but wait a minute. How's that going to affect me when it comes time for retirement?
And a lot of people don't answer that question very well.
Yeah.
And so that's present bias. And the financial applications of this are pretty self-evident. And you just put your finger right on it. Like a lot of people, my generation, the baby boomers, are retiring, and they don't really have sufficient savings to support the lifestyle that they have had or that they want to have. And that's because the present bias has been at work.
And, you know, I think a lot of times, and when I was younger, I thought that way. You don't realize how fast the time goes. That when you're in your 20s, you don't think about the fact that one of these days I'm going to be 65 or 70 years old, and perhaps I want to retire. I'm not going to have a job. How am I going to live? I remember when I came to work to the university at KOMU, I was a young toddler, about 22, 23 years old. And I remember before I was hired, he said, "We have a very good retirement package." And here I am, 22 years old. And I thought that it went in one ear and out the other. I thought, what? I don't care about the retirement package. Little did I know I was going to stay there for 40 plus years, and that retirement package is pretty good. But I didn't think of it at that time.
Well, that's entirely normal, Paul. I mean, this is why we call it a bias, is it skews things towards the present at the expense of the future. And it's hard for a 22-year-old to think about what it's like to be 65, even to do that. So, in fact, let me just make one suggestion about how we might go about countering that. You know, how would we work about what might a 22-year-old do to try to overcome some of this present bias? Let's say in the financial realm, there's a software called age progression software. And I just Googled it before I came in.
It's called what?
Age progression software. So the basic idea is you upload a photo of you.
I've heard about that.
Yeah, and it ages you, you know, and so you might say, I want to know what I think I'm going to look like 15 years from now, or 40, or whatever.
But
right?
How accurate is it?
Well, you know, it can't be perfect, but I will say it's dramatic in the sense that, I mean, here's you know, the present bias exists in part because there's a little bit of a disconnect between our present self today and our future self, right? And so if we see somebody that kind of looks like us who's much older, we may have a little more sympathy and towards that person, right? And therefore we might say, oh, you know, that poor guy, even though it's kind of you, that poor guy is, you know, I want him to retire, you know, comfortably, and so I need to do that.
So you got to think about that present bias. What's the other topic?
Well, I was thinking about present bias also as applied to health decisions and lifestyle decisions, because there are lots of things. I mean, you know, let's just think about excessive drinking, for example. And excessive, we're not going to debate what constitutes that, but you know, if we drink, it's pleasurable in the present time, but it has long-term consequences.
Right. Or overeating.
Oh, same thing.
You may love to eat a lot, and you like certain foods, and well, it's gratifying to have those foods, but what is it doing to your body, and what effect is that going to have in the future?
Exactly. And the consequences are not immediately available. I mean, you may wake up with a hangover the next day or something, but the longer term consequences are not immediately available. They take time to play out. In fact, there's a saying, and I looked it up this morning. It's attributed to a lot of different people, but and many of your listeners may have heard this, but the saying is something like, if I knew I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself. Again, variously attributed.
Or if I knew I was going to live this long, maybe I'd have saved a little more money for the future.
Yep, it's the same theme, right? It's exactly right. So you were kind of overly discounting the future.
So how do we get ourselves in the right mindset? If we got people out there listening that are 30, 35, 40 years old, you still have a good part of your life ahead of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you get in that right mindset to put enough away to say, okay, maybe I need to spend a little bit less right now so I've got it for the future?
Well, I had mentioned this age progression software, and there are plenty of websites, and it's free, by the way. So, you can do that. The other thing is there are a variety of what are called commitment mechanisms. And a commitment mechanism can be, first of all, you can make a commitment to yourself, like I'm not going to overeat or I'm going to save more. But it rarely provides sufficient motivation, right? So the next step would be take a good friend and say, Paul, I'm going to do Sober October, which is actually an event, go without alcohol. And then if I don't, you could give me a hard time, right? There are also commitment websites, which are free, where you can commit some money. And then if you don't do what you say, like increase your savings by 5% or lose 5 pounds over the next 2 months or whatever the goal might be, you can actually assign the money to go to a cause that you dislike. So there's a huge incentive to get this right. And I don't want to go but everybody out there can picture an institution or a political candidate or something that they don't like, right? And you can go on these websites and say, if I don't do this, $50 is going to go there. And that provides a fairly strong motivation as well to do that.
Of course, that's all on the honor system, too.
It is. But they're going to take your word for it if you didn't do it. But they also try to verify that you did do it. Right.
I hope that the message that we're getting across today is to think about the future.
Absolutely.
And even if you're in your 60s or your 70s, you got time ahead of it. Think about the future and what's going to happen to the future. And if you're not concerned about yourself, think about the people that you love. Think about the people that you want to make sure that they're happy and fine.
That's a great thought too, Paul.
Okay. And if people want your book, it's called The Foolish Corner.
The Foolish Corner.
It's available?
It's available on Amazon, both print on demand and Kindle.
Okay.
And I have a newsletter, which is johnhowe.substack.com.
Okay. Got it. There it is. John, thank you so much for coming by.
A pleasure as always, Paul.
Pleasure having you here. Drop me an email, something you'd like to hear. See, pepperpmissouri.edu. Bye-bye.